For more than 280 years, this painting has hung here in the painted drawing room at Wentworth Woodhouse, and now it is about to be restored thanks to the support of the Aldama Foundation. It's a charming scene, two beautifully dressed children about to release a small bullfinch from its cage.
The boy is young Charles Watson-Wentworth, then styled Lord Higham. Within 10 years, he would inherit Wentworth Woodhouse. Within 20, he would be Prime Minister. Beside him is his younger sister, Lady Charlotte. The finch cleverly references their mother's maiden name, but may also be a reference to the little light Chinese aviary in the gardens. But the whimsical painting conceals a deeper meaning. The painter has captured something of the close ties between the two, close ties that would persist their entire lives.
On the opposite wall, the portrait of the children faces an earlier painting of their parents, Thomas Watson-Wentworth and his wife Lady Mary, 1st Marquess and Marchioness of Rockingham. The portraits are placed as a direct conversation between the generations, the legacy of the past, looking forward to the promise of the future. In the other rooms on the ground floor, you can find the rest of their children. In the ship room, you can find the 14-year-old Lady Mary with the pet lamb. Lady Mary is also holding a circlet of spring flowers, perhaps symbolising the early bloom of womanhood.
A portrait of their eldest child, 21-year-old Lady Anne, hangs in the low drawing room. Bright, artistic, she would prove vital to the succession. It would be her son William who would one day inherit the estates. The portrait is almost obscured by grime and coal dust. Hidden away in the anteroom next to the low drawing room is 3-year-old Lady Henrietta Alicia, affectionately known as Harriet. This little imp would one day scandalise the family by marrying her Irish footman. Of the 10 children Lady Mary bore, only these 5 survived by 1741, the date around which we believe the portrait of the children was painted. Mortality was devastatingly high amongst children of the period. Half died before the age of 5. By the time the children's portraits were painted, the family had already buried 4 children, including 2 heirs. Charles was born in 1730 at Wentworth Woodhouse into a house of mourning, just weeks after the death of his 5-year-old brother Daniel. His sister Charlotte arrived 19 months later. The two would remain close for their whole lives. In 1734, a catastrophic blow fell on the Watson-Wentworths. Thomas, their 14-year-old son and heir, had caught smallpox returning home from his studies in Geneva, and had suddenly died at Leyden in Holland. 5 years later, almost to the day, William, the next son and heir, died of a fever, aged just 10. Their grieving father, surrounded by the rising walls of this magnificent house, wrote in his journal,
"This unfortunate year I have lost my dear eldest son, William. God prevent our being too attached to the honours or state of the world above what we ought, and bless my now and only son Charles to a long and Christian life."
Their surviving children were precious beyond compare. They had pet names. Anne was Nanny, Mary was Polly, Charles was Punch, and Charlotte, affectionately, was Pussy, and little Harriet, with her hat pulled firmly over her hair, was Grimlock. Their parents were anxious about their children's health and welfare. Lady Mary was asthmatic, and Charles, their last surviving son and heir, was a frail, ailing child. Under all the silk and satin and the pretty poses of the portraits is a story of fear, fragility, and fierce parental love. The children were born into a world of transformation. Wentworth Woodhouse was a veritable building site during their childhood. The Great West Front was begun around 1728. but not finished until 1734, during which time the landscaping of the park and pleasure grounds took place. Work started on the vast east front soon after. The Great Hall was only roofed in 1738, when Charles was 8 years old. For most of their childhood, the house was a place of scaffolding, stone, and constant transformation. Their future was quite literally being built before their eyes. From receipts in the Sheffield muniments, we catch glimpses of the children's education.
The Right Honourable Earl of Malton from Joseph Pycock. Teaching from the 21st of April, 1737 to the 25th of June, deducted £2 and 5 shillings. 3/4 bundle of Italian pens, 1 shilling and 6pence. 6 writing books at 2pence each, 1 shilling.
10th of May to the 18th of November, 1743, £7 and 7 shillings. Horse hire for the time above, £1, 14 shillings, and 8 guineas more for teaching Harriet to read.
At 8, Charles was sent away to Westminster School. The regime was brutal, flogging was routine, and hardship expected. Charles was withdrawn when he was 11 due to ill health and tutored at home. From the age of 9, Charles understood he would one day inherit this great house and its vast estates. The prosperity and welfare of all the people on them, the servants, tenants, farmers, workers, tradespeople, pensioners and dependents, would become his responsibility. His parents instilled in him a powerful sense of duty of care. One story tells of 11-year-old Charles discovering a pensioned-off soldier and his family fainting from hunger after they had been turned away by a servant at the big house. Charles was horrified. It was an appalling return for the soldiers' service. He gave them the food from his own pocket and escorted them back to the house to plead their case with his father. He begged his father to give the man a job and a cottage on the estate, and even offered to give them his own quarterly allowance. His father, immensely proud of his son, agreed to provide the man with a home and a job. Compassion and kindness, it seems, were learnt young at Wentworth Woodhouse. He was passionately loyal to his king and his country. At 15, he was a colonel of one of the West Riding regiments when Bonnie Prince Charlie's Jacobite army invaded England, intent on toppling King George II from his throne. He abandoned his command to run away to join the Duke of Cumberland's army at Carlisle. To join them, he rode for 2 days and nights over wild moors, with only his groom for company. The Duke of Cumberland affectionately called him the little warrior and packed him off back to his father at Wentworth, but the two became lifelong friends. George II called him a hero of the times. His loyalty to the Hanoverian throne and his courage was unquestioned. In 1750, whilst on his grand tour of the continent, he received a last letter from his dying father.
Remember your duty and use your inheritance for the benefit of the king, your country, all your tenants and dependents.
He came home immediately to take on that duty. The task was daunting. In 1751, aged just 21, he inherited his father's title of Marquis of Rockingham and all his father's estates in Yorkshire, Northamptonshire and Ireland, together with houses at Malton, Higham Ferrers, Newmarket and London, Wicklow, Ireland, and of course the majestic Wentworth Woodhouse. He took on the role of leader of the Whig Party and was to become Prime Minister twice in the troubled reign of George III. He died in office in 1782, aged 52, just weeks before the peace treaty with America that he had worked so hard to bring about was finally signed. The frail boy in the portrait had become a statesman. And what of Charlotte? In Georgian society, she did something remarkable. She did not marry. Instead, she remained financially independent and politically engaged. She supported her brother throughout his career. She actively campaigned for reform. She recorded for posterity crucial and sometimes controversial conversations between her brother and the king. In 1766, after Rockingham had finally extracted the king's reluctant assent to repealing the much-hated Stamp Act, the king appeared to backtrack. His friends let it be known in Parliament that he would be delighted if the bill was defeated.
The next day, my brother sought an audience with the king and complained with some warmth that his own honour was at stake, as if he had deceived his friends when at the last conference they had had, the king had agreed to the repeal. The king could not deny what his friends had done, but went so far as to admit that he had agreed to the repeal. My brother drafted a statement in pencil, and the king added his clarifications in pen.
Charlotte knew the eyes of the world were upon them. She would not allow her brother's reputation and honour to be tarnished. A record of the truth would survive, written in her own hand.
I am persuaded my memory is correct as to this transaction. C.W.
When her sister Harriet horrified the family by marrying their Irish footman, William Sturgeon, it was Charlotte who acted as trustee of her fortune and later guardian to her children. She, like her brother, had learnt a duty of care to her family, dependents, and the country as a whole. When she died in 1810, she had outlived all of her brothers and sisters. Her last wish was to be buried in Marylebone Cemetery, as close as possible to the grave of a Mrs. Elizabeth Walmsley, who had died 47 years before. Their relationship seems to have been the single most important relationship in her life. Although their story is lost to us, it was not lost to Charlotte. Charlotte cherished it across the span of decades. When we look again at the painting in the painted drawing room, we no longer see simply two elegant children releasing a bird. We see they were survivors. We see a brother carrying the weight of expectation and a sister whose loyalty would shape his life. We see a family marked by grief, building not only a house of astonishing proportions, but a legacy of duty, politics, reform and compassion. The bullfinch is being set free, but the children themselves were never entirely free. They were bound by inheritance, expectation and history.
As this painting undergoes restoration, it offers us something precious, not just the preservation of paint and canvas, but the recovery of human stories. Stories of love, of loss, of responsibility, and stories of the children who once played in these rooms, unaware of the lives that lay before them.
Before you go, if you'd like to be part of this exciting project to restore all the portraits in the series, please give what you can by scanning the QR code on your screen now or by using the link below. Every donation will help safeguard these irreplaceable works of art.